Namaste, I'm Dr. Robert, and today on 5-ish Minutes with Dr. Robert, my subject is the Nakshatras. Nakshatra is an excellent word, probably emerging from the root naksh, which means to approach. And possibly it came from this because, of course, the moon, as it moves through the sky, approaches various nakshatras. What a nakshatra is a different way of dividing the zodiac and the stars and patterns that are in the zodiac than is the method that's employed to divide them into the 12 constellations that we're familiar with in modern astrology, those being Aries and Taurus and Gemini, etc. It's the same zodiac. It's the same 360-degree circle of sky. But those 12 divisions are made roughly according to the 12 months that the sun covers in 1 year. So it covers roughly 1 month per, in India they're called rashis. A solar constellation. The nakshatras instead are lunar constellations, and the moon covers roughly one of those constellations every day, roughly. So originally in Vedic times, and these definitely come from Vedic times, there were 28 nakshatras. And this was fine because back at the time of Vedanga Jyotisha, astrology was focused on the moon. The sun was very, very little involved in the reality of Jyotisha back then. When in the classical period, maybe 2,500, 3,000 years ago, when the influence quite possibly from the Middle East of solar astrology became prominent. Who knows? Possibly Alexander the Great had something to do with that. In any event, there was an alignment of the solar perspective and the lunar perspective to create the luni-solar Jyotisha that we have now. And at that time, for the purpose of ease of calculation, the number of nakshatras was standardized at 27, and they were also standardized in the sky. In the Vedic era, there was no mention of how big or small the nakshatras were. That was not what was important. What was important was the energy of the nakshatras, not the precise placement of the moon or other grahas, other planets, in them in the sky. Whereas once we got to the period where the solar and lunar aspects of astrology were being connected together, then it became very useful to have 12 standardized solar constellations of 30 degrees each and 27 standardized lunar constellations, nakshatras, of 13 degrees and 20 arc minutes each, 1/3 of a degree, 13 and 1/3 degrees. Because then what would happen is, and what does happen, is that 1/4 of a nakshatra is equal to 1/9 of a constellation. 1/9 of a constellation is often called a navamsh, and 1/4 of a nakshatra is called a pada or a charana, both of which mean a foot. So now we have a way of aligning nakshatras and constellations together. Each of the nakshatras has a traditional, starting with the Veda and then proceeding into classical astrology, a traditional interpretation that sometimes has certain aspects, certain qualities, attributes in alignment with the solar constellation in which it sits or near which it sits, and sometimes has no connection whatsoever. So Western astrologers sometimes have simply tried to interpret nakshatras as aspects of the 12 constellations they are familiar with, which is kind of ridiculous, let's be honest. Nakshatras are their own subject. They deserve attention for themselves according to how they have been elaborated over the past several thousand years. This is Dr. Robert, wishing everyone a very happy exploration of the night sky.